All right, so on Learning Suite, the file is just foodinspections.xlsm. And in fact, this is just some data I downloaded from the city of Chicago. It's like I must have downloaded it in 2017 because that's the latest date, is February 2017 that I see here. And so this is real data from their food establishment inspection program. You're selling food or you're providing food, you got to be inspected every so often. And what do we have here? We got, anyone here from Chicago? Anyone from Chicago? No, maybe you've eaten at some of these places. It'd be kind of bad if you found out they failed their inspection, afterwards. But so here we have the Noodles Party, or the North Garden, or Torta Zurita LLC. And so each line here then is a record of an inspection. So here, this tells us they're a high-risk establishment. I don't think that means that there's something about this restaurant that's particularly high risk, except that they're working with foods that could get someone really sick. You start with raw meat, you're a high risk. I was really kind of surprised to find out some of these that were low risk or medium risk. What was the one up here? There's a medium risk here. Who's this? McDonald's. It was really surprising that McDonald's is medium risk. And I wonder if it's just because they don't really start with anything raw there. I think everything's pre-cooked by the time it gets to McDonald's. It's tougher to get someone sick if you don't got any raw meat that you're ever starting with. But most of these restaurants, they're working with stuff that's pretty high risk. What's that? Yeah. So the question is, what's the Delta Sky Club? I think that's exactly what it is. It's a frequent flyer lounge. They're selling some kind of gluten-free cookie, or giving away probably some kind of gluten-free cookies in there, and I don't know what else. Was it low risk or was it high? It's high risk. Who knows what they're doing in there? I don't know. I'm not a high flyer. Thank goodness. I used to be a really frequent flyer. I'm so glad I'm not anymore. Okay. That life got old after about a year. Probably way before that. So what do we have here? We got some other mediums. What are this? We got a mobile food preparer. I don't even know what a mobile food preparer is, but I guess that's what he is. A street kitchen. Oh, here's a low risk. What's this? Sushi is low risk? What? I don't know. Anyway, I guess they know what they're doing over there in Chicago. Anyway, so that's what we have. And then as we come over here a little further, we can see for a particular inspection here that happened on the 7th of February. Maybe this is all just 7th of February, 2017. I guess they were trying to get their license. They passed. And then this is just latitude and longitude of where they are. So I think if you're really interested in the more details here, column A is the inspection number. We could go ahead and just do this one. I'm going to come over here to violations, and I'm going to search in column A for that inspection number. And then it'll tell us, oops. We should find that inspection, or maybe not. Anyway, I guess that's the idea. I'm not sure why it's not hooking up. We won't be looking at the inspection details, but here's the inspector saying something, leaked at pipe under employee toilet from hand sink, inserted into something, I don't know. Those are the inspector's comments. We're going to spend our time here on the food inspections table or worksheet. Now, the whole purpose of today is conditional branching. We've done a little bit of conditional branching already. It's like the if statement, but we're going to go probably into more detail than you ever wanted to go today. And this is just the backdrop. Oh, it's kind of interesting thing. So the city of Chicago publishes lots and lots and lots of data. This is one of them. But just shortly after they started publishing data about the food inspections, there was a company that was taking advantage of this data, and they were making lots of money. Can you imagine what company it was? What company do you think could take this data and really capitalize on it? What's that? Yelp? I don't know. It wasn't Yelp, but maybe they could do something with it. See if you have any thoughts. And if you're thinking, what kind of business could take advantage, really good advantage, of knowing when different restaurants had failed their inspection? Oh, attorney or law might be able to do it. They're probably, kind of when this gets published, they're probably not ready to go down the legal path. Maybe hospitals. That's interesting. I thought about that one. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah. We saw the guys having a leak here. Yeah, so plumbers, and in fact, what it was a exterminator. So pest control. So it would post here that you failed because you had a rodent problem, right? Well, can you imagine you just got this failing report, and the next day someone calls you and says, "Hey, we're running a special on our we're going to be in your neighborhood today. We can do it today." What are you going to say? Yeah, you're not even going to check to find out his special is really double price. You're not going to check, right? You can come and do it today. Great, you're hired. And so that was kind of interesting. So, public people, cities more and more are publishing information, and companies are figuring out ways to do it, to use it. Now, we're just using this today to have an interesting backdrop to look at conditional branching. So here's the idea. What I'd like to do is maybe we'll start with this risk column. And this used to be one of the main things that we would do in VBA that people would get really excited about. We'd say we want to highlight these a different color based on what different risks they want. Our high risk to be one color, medium risk, and low risk to be something else. And then Excel made conditional formatting, and kind of the wind went out of our sails. Oh, you can just do that from the menu now. So, but anyway, it's still a pretty good example to look at conditional branching. So that's our first task. But we're going to start with an in-class exercise, a little review. What I want you to do is make a loop that will print off the names of all the restaurants. I don't care if you do column C or column B. One's they're both names of the restaurants. There might be a difference between them in some cases, so one's longer or shorter. But just give me a loop that will print off this data. And we'll take, I'm going to give you 4 minutes, and let's see if you can do it. I don't care what kind of loop you do. You've got lots of loops to choose from. I'll do it too while you're doing it. I may go get some water while you're doing it, actually. I'm pretty thirsty. Drinking fountain out here is busted. But Parker's right over here, so if you have questions while I'm wetting the old whistle, I'll be right back. Good luck with your loop. Should I pause the video? Yes, that would be nice. Oh, I almost forgot. I didn't make it with 3 seconds to spare. All right, are we recording again? Oh, yeah, we are. Set S equal to this workbook dot worksheets. And looking for the one called food inspections. Subscript data range. Oh, plural, inspections. Okay, so that gives us the basic structure to be able to work looking across all that data, to be able to make some decisions about how to go. So let me go ahead and give you a minute or two. Is there anyone who still needs some time to work on that loop? Okay, so let's just take a minute or two now that you see my solution up here, and either copy what I have here or call me over and I'll help you get going with the approach that you took. And presto, I typed a bunch of stuff when I forgot to record. Welcome back, studio audience. Anyway, so we now have the if block. We're working on the else right here. But if you have else and you put a statement on that same line and you leave, it doesn't give you an error. The editor goes, I can fix that for you, and it puts a colon in there. And so you think, oh, that must be natural, that must be normal. It's not normal. Don't do that. It executes okay. But what the colon does, let's back up. In many, many, many languages, they say, listen, you're going to make a statement, and that statement is going to start with some keyword, and it's going to end with a semicolon. And if you want that statement to go across 3 or 4 lines, great. Just put the semicolon when you're done with the statement. In VBA, we say, no. We are going to assume that you're putting one statement per line, and that is true the vast, vast majority of the time. So we're going to say you don't have to put a semicolon at the end to tell you we're done with the statement. We're just going to assume one line. But if you decide you want to put 2 statements on the same line, you can do that. What do? You put a colon between the 2 statements. And so what it's done here is it has said, you're trying to put 2 statements on the same line. I can figure that out, and it puts a colon. You don't want that. You want this to be on the next line. And in fact, you want these to be tabbed in so that you can see the if structure when you look at it. So if, else, what's that? Well, okay, maybe it's not a full statement, but I can do 2 things right here on this line. I can have the else, then I can have the statement with it. But you really can do multiple statements. Watch this. X equals 5, colon, debug.print x. So I could put as many, I could do as many as I want. I could say, in the meantime, x equals x plus 22. Another colon. And so by separating statements with colons, you can put multiple ones onto a single line. So when the editor does that for you, it's like your pusher. He's trying to pretend he's your friend, but he's not your friend at all. He's trying to get you addicted to sloppy code. And so you really want to see that else stand out, and it doesn't stand out nearly so well if there's another line there with it. Okay, so I think I'm also going to set, even though the color's already black, as we're changing things around, we might have a line that we change to white and then decide to change to something else. So I'm going to go ahead and set the font color for these to black as well. Okay, so now what I have is as we're coming in here, we're going to check and see if this condition is true. If this condition is true, so if risk 1 high is in column F of whatever our current row is, then we're going to make it red with a white font. If it's not, if that's false, we're going to jump to the else and move through there. So these two blocks of code now are mutually exclusive. If it's true, I execute the first block. When I get to the else, I jump to the end if. If it's false, I jump immediately to the else and then execute from there going down. So that should give us now two colors. I forgot, I was going to change it to black, but I never did. I left it as white. So let's put that to black. Okay, so now my medium risk is yellow, my blanks are yellow. I think there's a low risk. There's a low risk 3, risk 3 low, yellow as well. Okay. Okay, so now we can do something here with nesting. So we can put conditional blocks inside of conditional blocks, inside of conditional blocks. You can go crazy. And you would be crazy to go crazy because it gets very hard to maintain. It's really tough for the old human interpreter to follow all this different nesting. But let's go ahead and do one level or two levels of nesting, one level of nesting, and see. So now we've gotten here to, if it's high, we're going to make it red, but we've got lots of other choices here. So I'll put another if statement here, and I'll say if it's medium, we'll make it yellow, otherwise we'll make it green. Ah ha ha. Risk 2 medium. Then we'll make it yellow, and I'll have another else right here, and an end if. And let's go ahead and bring some green in here. So I think with green we'll probably want, oh, the green is really kind of a bad color green. No, I still like green. I just want it to be a little darker green. I'm not sure I'd do it. We'll just go ahead and work with it. VB green. Did we see how to actually compose a color, like to choose a color that we want, one we really want? Let's just take a little detour here real quick, folks. I'll make that green. We'll see that's not very good, and then we'll change it. I'm not sure if I'll want white or black with this color for my font. Okay, but let's see if I can get all of this showing. This whole statement. Okay, so now we're coming here saying if it's red, or if it's high risk, make it red, we hit the else, we jump to the end if, and we're done. But if it's not high risk, we come into here and immediately ask another question. Is it medium risk? If it is, we execute this block, and then we jump to the end if, and we're done. Otherwise, we jump to the else, and we go through. So now we've got a nested if statement. And the truth is, like one level of nesting is not too bad, but as soon as you get past one level, you're doing like 2 levels of nesting, it gets really tough to maintain, and it's one of the places that errors happen in your code. Now, we've seen several kinds of errors so far, and we're going to spend time talking specifically about these errors and these different classes of errors, as well as how to defeat them. But sometimes you'll type a line, you'll leave the line turns red, and it may even nag you and say there's an error here. Have I shown you how to get rid of that dialog box that shows up? Do you want to get rid of that dialog box that shows up when you make an error? Look, if I have a syntax error on here, like I leave off the dot, that's not a syntax error. If I put a comma there instead, my line turns yellow, but it doesn't put the dialog box. Are you getting the dialog box still? Do you want to get rid of that dialog box? Yeah, hopefully you do, because it's really annoying. Come to Tools, Options, and there's an auto syntax check. If you uncheck that, your line will still go red. It just won't put the dialog box up. That dialog box used to be terrible. You get to the end of a line, you'd hit enter. Like you're going to hit enter a couple of times, and when you hit enter, it'll click the help button. And it used to be, it took a long time to open up help, and I was like, ugh. Anyway, that'll take that off. The question is that an Excel setting or a workbook setting? The answer is it is an Excel setting. So you're now done with that annoying dialog box until you turn that back on. Okay, anyway, that kind of error is easy to find. Maybe not easy to fix, but it's easy to find. You know where it is. The line is red. It's a problem right here. That's called a syntax error. You typed something so bad, the interpreter couldn't even figure out what you were talking about. Had no idea what you were trying to do. Now, there's another kind called a runtime error, and probably you've had these as well. A runtime error is syntactically okay, right? The interpreter goes, oh, yeah, you're trying to delete a worksheet with a name? Great, I know exactly what you're trying to do. But when it tries to execute it, it fails because, like, the worksheet doesn't exist. The instructor can figure out what you want to do, but it's impossible to do it, for some other reason. That's called a runtime error. The error doesn't happen until you actually try to execute it, and then it goes, hey, I can't do this. Also, easy to find. Maybe not easy to fix, but easy to find because it tells you, I tried to exit this line, I couldn't do it. That's not always where the error is, but at least it shows you that's where it got to before it failed. The third kind of error is the more dangerous error because it's called a logic error, and it's, as far as the interpreter is concerned, it's no error at all. You told it to do something, it's doing it, and it goes, great, done. But the problem is, you told it something different than you thought you told it to do. The error is where? Yeah, it's in your own mind. And so those are the tough ones to track down. And sometimes, especially if it's involved with these multiple levels of nesting, it might be that you only come into this part on a very seldom circumstance, once a year. And so unless you've got, you've done a really good job testing your code, you might hit it so seldomly, you might never ever realize there's an error. The place that most runtime errors are that go into production, deeply nested conditional branching. That's what it is. That's where most of the errors that kind of sneak through the testing process show up. So the point is that when you look at something and you say, oh, I'm nesting here, you say I'm nesting one level, okay. As soon as you say I'm going to nest even deeper, that's when you say, is there a different way to solve this problem that doesn't require so much nesting? And in this case, there actually is. Let me show you what it is. It turns out that this is so common to say, if it's this one, do this, otherwise, check to see if it's something else, right? We could nest this. If it's not risk, in fact, we've got another condition, right? Because we've got a low risk and we've got something else that's not marked. So we could nest one more level in here. But that's so common that they said, you know what, let's make a special case of the if statement. Here it is. Instead of nesting it, we're going to put it right up here on the same line, and we're going to use the keyword else if. And that will just become a part of the whole if then else structure. So now, I'm going to kind of bring these to the same level. So now with the else if clause, it now works like this. We check this one to see, is this true? If it is, we execute that block and drop out. If it's not, then we look at the next else if. And we say, is that one true? If it is, we execute its block. And then when we get to the next else or the else if, then we drop out. These are mutually exclusive blocks. There is nothing you could do to make these, to make two of these blocks of code execute. In fact, I could make both of these conditions true. Let's just do it this way. I mean, this is kind of an error in the code, but let me go ahead and put it in so we can talk about it. Well, I inadvertently left risk 1 high on both of these. So let's just pretend you're the interpreter. I'm going to come along, I'm going to evaluate this, And let's just say this is true. I'm on a line that's high risk. This is true. What do? I jump in right here. I execute that. I execute this. Now, is this one true? Also true. So do I execute this? The answer is no. Not only do I not execute it, I don't even evaluate the condition. I never even look at it. As soon as I hit this else if, I go, great, I'm done. And I say, where's the end if that corresponds to this block? It jumps to the end if, and it could be a long ways away, but it'll find that end if and say, we're done and ready to move on. And so you can put as many else if clauses into a block if statement as you want. Ultimately, if it ever gets to this one without having executed one of those, then it will execute this one. So by the time it gets to the else, if it hasn't done any of the ones before, this is your one. Questions? I don't think I ever ran it when it was nested, did I? Oh yeah, I did. So I'll be able to run it again, and that should do exactly the same thing. Kind of boring, didn't change anything, but there it is. We've got green for low, all my others. Questions? Okay. So we've kind of, now that's about all there is to the else if, to the if. So you can do it. Yeah, that really is. Question? Okay, so the question is, if I had this, can I go back? Let me try to go back to where I was. Okay, so I have this case where I have an if and an else if, and they're both true. So the question is, I think you're saying exactly how does that execute? And here's what happens. In an if statement, I always check the first condition. If that condition is true, I don't look at any other condition at the top level. Now, if something's nested, I'll have to look at conditions. But in this structure, I will never look at any of the other conditions that are here. So if that one's true, I execute these lines, I hit the else if, and I'm out. It doesn't even look to see what this one is. But if this one evaluates to false, it'll come here and go else if, and it will evaluate this one. It's not smart enough to look at that and go, oh, wait a minute, I just evaluated that same thing. I guess I'm not going to have to evaluate it here. No, it really will evaluate it again. And go, no, that one's false. I get to the else, and it goes, oh, I got here without executing anything, then we'll execute this block. There's another question in here somewhere? Yeah. Oh, what if the last one isn't else? What if we have this? Is that okay? That's totally fine. So what we're saying is, let me. Okay, let me talk through this, and then if you still got the question, ask it. So in this case, we'll just talk through how it goes. So if this is true, we execute this block. If it's not true, we look here. If this one's true, we execute this block. If it's not, there's nothing else to do, so we move on. So you don't have to have the else. But you do have to have the end if. The only situation where you can have an if without an end if is that very simple initial syntax where you say if then, and you have your statement on the same line. Every other form of the if statement requires the end if to be in there. Question? Is there a maximum number of else ifs? Yes, it's 32,767. I just made that up. I don't think there is a limit. Now, there may very well be a limit to how deeply you can nest. There may be a limit that you could bump up against. But if you've tried to nest something that deeply that you went further than VBA could nest, you're doing something terribly wrong. Yeah, that's next to impossible to maintain. Don't do that. But I don't think there is, in terms of number of else ifs. You're probably limited only by internal memory. So you're making a decision tree. Like, do you mean a flow chart? Like a flow chart?
For example, like I'm making a decision depends on several.
Oh, yes. Okay. So yeah, that's going to bring it. So the question is, You know, what if we have more than one condition? What if it's not really simple like this, but it's if this is true and this is true or this is true, how do we do that? Is that what you're asking? Let's take a look. So that's kind of the next way that we could make this more complex is to, you know what, let's leave this one the way it is and let's look at a different one. So let's say I want to do something for my, what would be a reasonable thing to be complex? So let's say if it's high risk and they failed and it was a complaint. There we go. If the kind of inspection is a complaint and it's a high risk establishment and they failed, then I want to do something special to that line. That's something that I want to make sure I'm really clear about that one. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one. So let me just put a note here. This is what we call complex conditions. So complex condition, right now, these are simple conditions. This is just, is something equal to something else? That's simple. But we can get complex, where we can say, if that's true, and this is true, or this is true, and not this other group, and it can really get ugly in a hurry. But let's do an example that actually makes sense. So we'll put it in here. If it's high risk, so let me copy my high risk one. We'll just start with this one. If it's high risk, and what else did I say? If it's a complaint. Okay, so where's my complaint? Inspection type, that's L, and short form complaint. What other kinds of complaint do we have? I guess I don't care if it's a short form or a long form complaint. So for this one, I'll do a little bit different condition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If the rightmost 9 characters of column L is equal to complaint. Column L. And the rightmost 9 characters, the right of that 9 characters. This is getting kind of long. I'm going to break this onto multiple lines. The way I do that is with an underscore character. So I'll say space underscore, and then I can bring this onto the next line. All right, so if it's high risk and it's a complaint and what was the other one I said? Oh, it was a failed. So M is fail. Okay, so column M is equal to fail. Then we've got something, and if. Whew. I think if that's the case, I want to give that line the measles. Do you know how to give a row the measles? I'm kind of surprised. This may be something that you've never seen before in Excel. They got all kinds of diseases. I'll record myself doing it because I'm not sure exactly the code to do it. So I'm going to record macro 1. I'm sure it'll produce a really simple code, so you don't have to record yourself doing this. But I'm just going to take like this whole row, and I am going to come to the format, and in fill, I'm going to choose a pattern style, polka dots, and I'll make those red polka dots. And I'll stop recording. So can you see that from where you are? That's not too bad. All right, so I've just put red polka dots behind as the background fill to that particular cell. Let me go see what code. That's what I want to do for folks that are, what did I say it was? Anyway, complaints that resulted in a failure at a high-risk establishment. So let me look at my code. And the pattern is XL gray 8. And the pattern color is red. And that's the interior. Okay. So I'm going to come back to my code. So if all of these things are true, then I'm going to say the whole row. So s.rows sub r dot interior dot pattern and pattern color. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then we're going to check and make sure that it all looks right, that we've got high-risk complaints that had failures. I hope there's at least one. Let me come here and get rid of this one that I had here. So we'll select this, Control 1, pattern style. How about none? All right, now we'll run that. I don't even know if that's true, but let's find out. Hopefully there's one. Oh, good, there's few. Okay, so now let's make that if that's true. It's high risk. It was a complaint and it was a failure. Short form complaint, failure. Now we had a complaint up here, but why didn't this one why wasn't this one selected? Oh, because it passed. Yeah, it passed. Here's a complaint, passed with conditions. I don't know. That's almost like a failure. Passed, but there's problems. Anyway, I don't know. I guess they weren't that bad. So we've got a few then that are there. Now we can get even more complex. So let's do this. Let's say if that's the case, or we'll do something else. I don't know what else to do. If it was a failure, or how about this? How about if it's a license and it's not ready? So either of those two should get it for us. So if, let's see, license is column L. Or, I'm going to just put them right here, I guess. If column L is license, and was it not ready? N-O-T-R-E-A-D-Y. Which column has the not ready in it? That's column M. Okay, so that should then also pick up this one because I've got the or in there. Oh, syntax error. I got an extra closing parenthesis. Hopefully it's that one. I was a little bit worried to delete something to fix it without really understanding what I just did. Yeah, but another license not ready. Do I have another license not ready? Maybe not. But I'm still getting my fail, complaint, high risk. Yeah. Question? So, so you're looking at, you're saying, why does this one? Because it doesn't equal complaint. I snuck something past you. And that is, I'm not checking for equality. I'm checking to see if the rightmost 9 characters is complaint. Yeah, there's actually some wildcard matching that we can do because there's a like operator, but we're not really scheduled to cover it. Class. So, you know what we could do? Let's do this. Let's say if that's the case, we'll do one thing. Otherwise, we're going to clear any of the background patterns. So else, that row's background pattern will be none. XL none. Okay, and now here's what I can do. I can take this whole thing and just put a knot around the whole thing. Whew. So now, what does that do? So for everything that's inside of that not expression that I just put on there, if that evaluated to true, the not is going to flip it to false. It's just going to reverse it. So that should just flip. We've only got a few of them here that are colored that way. And when we flip it, it should do the rest of it, and only a few should be not colored. So now it's just the opposite. So you've got and, or, and not that allow you to kind of to build up these more complex conditions. I'm going to get rid of that not because I don't think it makes sense. I think what we've done makes a little more sense than that, so I'm getting rid of that. So let's just play for and or and not for a little bit because it's probably been since 7th grade that you actually studied this. Did you make truth tables like in pre-algebra or something? True and true, true or true. Yeah, you did these? So I can take true or true, and that is true. True or false is what? True. False or false? False. And, do you ands in here? False and true. Let's go back to or. That's true. There's another one called exclusive or, XOR. What do you think? False, XOR true? True or false? It's true. I'm not going to test you. The only ones I'm going to test you on, and I will test you on these, is and or not. I'll expect you to know and or not, but let me just show you there's some other ones here. So exclusive or is only true if one argument is true. So this should be true. This should be false. True, XOR true. It's exclusive. Only one can be true. But if I flip them and do true or false this way, that goes back to true. It's an exclusive or. It really means only one is true. So there's some other operators besides just and or not. But and or not will get you a long, long way. Okay. You asked something about truth, about decision trees. And I answered the question, what about complex conditions? Did that answer your question? Good, because I don't know what else to say. Okay. So again, realize here that complex conditions are another place where it's tough for the human processor to deal with it. So just realize anytime you say, listen, I've got an and, if you've got a bunch of ands, this and this and this and this, that's fine. If you've got a bunch of ors, this or this or this or this, that's fine. But as soon as you start mixing ands, ors, and nots, that's when you've got to start saying, I got to be very careful about what I'm doing. Okay, questions? So we've seen nesting. We've seen complex conditions. Let's look at another branching structure altogether. That is, I think, about as much as I know about the if structure. I'll run this one more time now that I've gotten rid of the not. Kind of put me back where I was. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do something with the select case statement. Out of business, pass. Out of business. All right, let's do a simple one just looking at column M. So here's the structure for select case. It's really similar to the if, else if, else if, else if, but there's some important differences. So here's the basic syntax. Select, case, and then I put some condition here. I'm going to leave that off for now. Case, case, case else, and select. Okay. Now, when I'm looking at the if statement, I put the whole condition right between the if and the then. Doesn't matter how complex it is. The whole condition goes here. But we've said, there's something that happens so frequently in programming where I'm looking at one expression, like one variable or one cell, and I'm trying to decide to do something different if it's this, or I'll do something else if it's this, or something else if it's this. I want to compare different values to one expression that we've got a structure that's simpler that's meant just for doing that. So let's say I'm looking at column M. I'm looking at my active cell in column M. I just say select case. I'm looking at column M. I'm looking at column M of my active row. Now, in the case statement, I'm going to say, if that is fail, I'll do something. What will I do? I guess I'll make it red. I'll make the interior color red. Oh, and now actually, I'm not sure we've looked at the color index. For the homework that's due tonight, I have you deal with color index. C-O-L-O-R index. C-O-L-O-R index. You might say the color index equals 6. Oh, it used to be there was like 53 different colors you had to work with in Excel, and they weren't very exciting colors. Like, are these the best colors we have? Yeah, there's 53. You know, you make the most of it that you can. Then, I forget when it was. It might have been like in 1997. They said, oh, we're going to give you lots more colors, millions of colors. And so we have two properties, color index, which still has just like 57 choices, or 53 choices, and then you've got color. So it's a little simpler to work with color index, but not as interesting. So we're going to work with color here in this example. Color 6 is a color, it's almost black, indistinguishable from black. But I'm going to put in my favorite color, my favorite red color anyway, which is 666. That will be the color. It's kind of a dark red, very appropriately, I think. And then why don't I also go ahead and change the font color to white. Whoops. And I'll just use the constant for that, VB white. All right, so if it's fail, we'll do that. If it's I should totally take off the cases. Let's take a look. What do I have here? Case, fail. Yeah. There's no case here. Copied too much. But now I'm going to say, look, if it's out of business, we're going to do something different. What color should we do out of business? I don't know. We'll make it blue. And we could do other things. Now, of course, if I have a case else here, it behaves the same. Now, this, just the way as it would with a bunch of else ifs. The difference between this and a bunch of else ifs is that in the else if construct, each of the comparisons that I'm making are totally independent from each other. Now, in this case, I am looking at the same thing, but it could be something totally different. I could say if the risk is high, then do this. Otherwise, if the resolution is fail, then do this. Otherwise, if the zip code is this, do something different. They can be totally separate from each other. But as soon as I say select case, I am saying, listen, I am looking at one expression here, and I'm behaving differently based on what value is there. And so if that's what you're doing, that's really, you should be using the select case, because when another programmer looks at it, they look at it and immediately go, okay, select case, I got it. I know what you're doing here. Just run that and make sure that syntactically it's okay. We should see some red with white and some blue with white. Red with white, blue with white. So that's select case, and you can have as many case statements as you want, or case clauses as you want inside of it. I like select case better. Why? Because it's less wordy. So maybe it's less intuitive than if then. I mean, if you're familiar with if then in other languages, it's pretty much the same in VBA. You may not have the select case statement here, although most languages have something similar. So it's just less wordy. You have less structure around it to be able to see what it's doing. Yep. Oh, case else at the end, because I just didn't do anything with it. So in that case, we wouldn't need it. But let's say otherwise I'm going to make everything yellow. So if it doesn't fill in any of those, it'll make it yellow. That'll be kind of boring, but that'll run now. And now, since none of the ones before it were selected, it drops back into that. So it's kind of same structure as the else part of an if statement. Questions on select case? So this is actually my preferred solution to the homework that's due for tonight, is select case, because you're just going to look at the cell. You're going to say, is the interior pattern index 6? If it is, make it 7. If it's not, is it 3? If so, make it 4. So it's a pretty good approach for that. Yep. Can you do and or with case? And the answer is you usually don't, but you can. So this just has to be an expression. So you can kind of reverse engineer a select case statement to work just like an if statement. Because you could say here, you could say true. I'm looking for the first one that evaluates the true, and then you could put something really complex here that evaluates the true or false. I don't recommend that, because select case says I'm looking at something and which one matches. And even though you could wire that, that's really not, it works, but it's not really the normal use. So this is the more normal approach. Let's do one more thing to just show that we can do not just equality, but we can do comparisons for inequality as well. Question though? Okay, so the question is, what's the real difference? And the answer is there's a lot of overlap. And in fact, for what I've done here, I could have used the select case up here just as well. The fundamental difference is that my comparison here now is split across multiple places in the structure. So I say I'm looking at the value of M, of our current row, column M. Is that fail? If it is, do this. If it's not, let's look here. Is it out of business? If it is, do this. If not, let's look here. Is it whatever else I might have here? Finally, if I get down to case else and there's nothing else, then I execute that. So this structure says I'm looking at one expression and I'm doing something different based on what its value is. And I can have lots of different comparisons that I'm looking for. When I come up here and look at the if else, now the difference here is that each one of these conditions is totally independent from each other. It happens that here I'm always looking at the same thing, column F, column F, column F. But it doesn't have to be. I could be looking at column Q here. I could be looking at if it's false, false, and it's almost 5 o'clock, do something different. I could look at something totally different, as long as it evaluates the true or false. Now, it's not necessary. It just has to be true or false, so it doesn't have to be equals, right? This could be greater than. If this is greater than something, then do that block. And we're going to do something similar in the case statement next. But there's a question here. Are these mutually exclusive? Are these blocks mutually exclusive the same way the if, then, else is? If, then, else, if. Yeah, and the answer is yes. Once I get to one of these, I don't make comparisons anymore. So once this is true, I drop into this block, I execute these lines, I see that word case, I don't even look at this. The interpreter doesn't even see that. It just goes, oh, great, we're done. Drop to the end, select, and move on. They're mutually exclusive. And this is important too. I think we said this earlier, but if you do something that changes to make this condition true in here, that doesn't change it. What if I wanted that? What if I wanted, 3 different conditions, and if the first one actually changed something, so the second one is true, I want that one to execute too. What do I do? I'm not sure that I can come up with a really good example for that. If x equals 5, or x equals 4, then I'll do something. In here, I'm going to say b equals 5. If this is an else if, we'll just kind of do the example, even though it's just kind of abstract. Let's say b equals 1. And I'm going to put an else if right here. else if b equals 5, then do something else. Will this code get to this block right here? By the time we get to this point right here, will this condition be true? Oh, let's put x equal to 4. X equals 4. If x equals 4, oh, we're coming here, b equals 5. Oh, all of a sudden, hey, b equals 5. Are we going to get here? No. But what if we wanted to get here? What if we said, well, hey, if something happens in here that makes this one true, we do want to do it? Yeah, they're just separate if statements. Put an end if here, and make an if here. So now, this one gets evaluated regardless of what happened to this one. They're not totally separate from each other. So you can make it that something that happens inside of an if statement affects some other one, but it has to be a separate if structure. So this if, we have an end if, end if. Okay, a couple more things to cover. That's not my best example ever because it was kind of abstract, but let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's pretend that never happened. Question? Okay, let's do one last thing. Well, two last things. So here we've got some longitude, latitude data. And what I want to do is I want to put a different color depending on how far north the establishments are. So I'm going to be looking right here at my column N. So maybe I'll just go ahead and copy this whole select case. I'm looking at column N. And maybe I'll be changing column N as well. I'm just going to change the color. Now, this is numeric. N select. So, I mean, if I'm looking for an exact match here, I'm not going to have very many matches. It's got a lot of different values. But I don't have to look for an exact match. Let's see, we're all 41 point. Let's say if it's less than 41.2. So if I want to do inequality inside a case statement, I will say case is less than some value. Then we'll make the interior color that way. So we can say it's less than 41.2. Okay. Now let's say if it's less than 41.3. We'll make it a different color. I don't know. We'll make that one green. And if it's less than 41, I think it's still on my clipboard. If it's less than 41.4, I'll make it blue. Now, if this condition is true, what can you tell me about the other conditions? They are also true. So, is it possible that I'll ever get to, will I ever get to this one? So I think I will get to this one. If I have 41.35, I think I'll hit this, won't I? So suppose that what's here is 41.35. Is that less than 41.2? That's false. Less than 41.3? False. Less than 41.4? True. So we'll come in here and we'll get this. So now, if I'm using this inequality here, the order in which I put these is going to be important, right? Because in the case of 41.2, let's say it's 41.1, these are all true. But I'm only going to execute the one that I hit first. And then I could do something else too. I could say, you know what, if it's, I can put a range in here. If it's 41.4 through 44, or no, 41.8 to 41.8, let's put it a different color. I'm out of colors. Yellow, I guess VB yellow. So we can do inequalities here as well. case, else. What colors haven't I used? Is there a pink? I know there's not an orange. Purple maybe. No purple. That's a color. I don't know what color it is. So now I've put in, apparently that's the color that I just made up. We should have a few colors in here. Didn't I do a blue? What was blue? Blue. What do we have here? Oh. Well, that's what I get for not looking at it and just thinking I remembered. So we can just bump all these up. But I think you'll see how it works. I don't think we need to actually see that execute. Okay, one last thing, which is it's not so much a new idea as it is a common error. So pay attention to my hands. Here I have two different blocks. Here you have a do and a loop. Here's a do loop block. Here I've got an if and an end if. I can put the if and the end if inside of the do and the loop. I can put the if and the end if outside of the do loop, but this is not legal. So, in fact, the error that you get when you do this is puzzling. Let me go ahead and do that so we can see the error and see if it can make sense. I'm going to come here and make another if statement. If true. Doesn't even have to be meaningful. True, then. And I'll put my end if down here. Okay, so that's not legal because if I got to have my whole loop either inside or outside of that if structure. But the error that this gives you, you'll be upset at this error. Loop without do. Now, what are you going to do if you're looking for that? You're going to go loop. Did I delete my do? No, the do's right there. What? Loop without do? Why is it saying loop without do? Because here's what it's saying. It's saying I'm inside this if structure. Let me just highlight the part that's inside the if. I'm inside this if structure from the if to the end if. If there's a loop in here, what else has to be inside this if? Yeah, the do has to be in here as well. So the problem isn't really that I didn't have the do. The problem is that I overlapped my constructs in such a way that the interpreter goes, this is not legal. And it really is a loop without a do. For this loop to be inside this if statement, there's got to be a do. And if it kept going, what would it say once it got out here past this if? It would say a do without a loop, right? I got to the end of the thing, there was no loop. So that's just a warning. That's an error that I expect most of you will make sometime during this semester. And the error message, unless you've seen it, doesn't really help you down the right road. Okay, other questions? Oh, that's conditional branching. That's everything I know about conditional branching. I said everything I know and some of it twice. And we still got 3 minutes to go. Class dismissed.